Welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how I made this tilting fence for my jointer planer combo. There are many similar models on the market, all of them likely manufactured in the same place for different brands. Obviously, they aren't as powerful or precise as other more expensive machines, but in general, they're not that bad when one takes their price into account. I've used mine for 3 years, and it's great for small projects once you get the hang of it. The outer casing is a little different in some models, but by changing the way you attach the fence to the machine, you can use the same design. Its biggest problem is the fence. Not only is it highly unstable, it's locked in place and can't be moved around the work table, which means we always use the same part of the knives, not taking advantage of the rest. By moving the fence around, I can use different parts of the knives when they're no longer sharp. I'll perform some tests to see the machine and the fence in action. This fence is definitely much more stable than the old one. I can also move the fence back and forth when it's tilted. Another small disadvantage to these kinds of machines is the unbearable noise they make, so we must always use ear protection when working with them. Now I'll show you how I made the tilting fence. First, I removed the built-in fence as well as a piece of plywood I had installed to deal with the stability problem with little success. I removed these screws holding the cable supports because I'm going to use those threaded holes. I cut the first plywood piece and glued the printable template onto it in order to machine this piece. Now I can attach it to the machine body. The screws must be just long enough because we don't have a lot of depth to work with. Now I'll cut and machine the 3 parts that will make up the fence's sliding base. I cut a groove with a table saw, allowing for more precise movement. Then I screw the 3 parts together. I align the jointer's 2 tables with one another, using an aluminum level. I also use it to screw the fence's base onto its emplacement. I put it 0.5 millimeter above the jointer's work table. I glue this piece of maple wood onto the groove I machined earlier. Now I'm going to make the upper part of the fence. After gluing the printable template on, I drill and machine these grooves. I use the same part to drill the fence's base. I'll use carriage bolts so that they won't turn when tightening the knobs. I cut the rest of the parts, and after machining them, I attach them to the part I made earlier. Now I'll find a flat piece of plywood and cut the part of the fence against which we'll press the workpieces when working with them. After working out its exact position, I attach 2 hinges that will allow me to tilt the fence. Lastly, I cut and machine the 2 parts that will lock the fence at an angle. I attach them to the front of the fence and see if everything works as intended. As I thought, I have to trim the grooves a little to achieve a perfect right angle. I'll use the opportunity to remove the old knives I've been using and sharpen them. As you can see, being able to detach the fence makes the operation easier. I clean all the surfaces with industrial strength degreaser. This kind of knife is so cheap it's not worth having it sharpened. I'll make a wooden template where I'll place the knives, which will also allow me to sharpen them 2 or 3 times. At that point, I might as well buy some new ones because they're so cheap. First, I do some tests with a table saw to work out the exact angle of the grooves. Now that I've found the angle, I make a template with this piece of oak. Using a tilting vise and a column drill, I make holes for the screws that will fasten the knives to the wooden block. I'll use a bit 1/2 millimeter smaller than the screw. I put the screws in place and make sure the 2 knives are parallel to each other. It looks like we have to adjust them a little. I'll mark the edges of the knives with a marker pen to ensure I'm sharpening them correctly. We could sand the whole edge of the knife or give it a little angle on the front of the edge as though it was a chisel. For sharpening, I'll use P120, P320, and P800 grit sandpaper glued to a perfectly flat piece of granite. I could also use thick glass. Now I can reassemble them to check whether there is a noticeable improvement. I put the springs in their holes and attach the knives and tightening jibs. I'll use these HPL parts I made to adjust the height. I screw them onto the holes that these machines have for the vacuum system when planing. The springs will push the knives upward until they touch the 2 pieces I attached to the machine, and we must tighten the nuts when the knife is at the same height as the work table. If all goes well, we should be able to turn the drum without any problems. I do some tests with a piece of chestnut wood, and they definitely cut much better. Thank you for watching and see you soon.